Welcome to the Overrated Experience Sports and Sports Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Blunt, and it's another week of NFL action. We got it here on the Overrated Experience. So tune in, take some notes, get that pen ready, and here we go. The Overrated Experience Sports and Sports Betting Podcast is for you, the square bettor, to follow me, an honorary square bettor. That what we mean by that is that most of you are not sharp bettors, just like myself. You go into a weekend and look at the betting action, and you look at mostly entertainment purposes, same game parlays. A lot of these things are no-nos. If you want to become a professional sports gambler, this is the podcast for you. I'm going to talk about my successes, going to talk about my failures. You're going to come along with the journey, and here we go. So on this episode of the Overrated Experience Sports and Sports Betting Podcast, we're going to focus on the NFL's Week 3 action, picks against the spread, player props. We're going to take a look back on the Thursday nighter that was with the Buffalo Bills hosting the Miami Dolphins. And if you want to follow the Overrated Experience Sports and Sports Betting Podcast, you can, and I suggest you do, on X at Overrated EXPER2. That's Overrated EXPER2 to follow the podcast. So we appreciate the support. Welcome aboard, and let's go. All right. So we just came off a Thursday nighter. Many of you Survivor Pool folks out there, for those who are familiar with that is you take a team each week, and once you use that team, you cannot use it again. And once you lose, you're out of that pool and lose whatever investment you made. I got to imagine the uniqueness of having the Thursday nighter with the Bills is most people wanted to take the Bills. Probably forgot to get their pick in before Thursday night, but if you took the Bills, you're safe, you won. And how it played out, if you listen to the podcast earlier in the week, we covered the Thursday nighter, and I had a mixture of success on my picks. I thought that the Bills, coming in on a short week, would not cover the 11.5 point spread at the time when we had the podcast. They did win, but only by 10, so that cover was there. It was a score fest, so over 49 and 49 and a half. Checkbox, win. Now, where we went off the rails a little bit was, depending on Tua, I put too much emphasis on Tua having to throw the ball. And it's not like he didn't have to throw the ball, is I assumed he would throw it at least effectively, which there was moments where he did, and there was moments where he was Tua. And I should have taken that into account and not put my props based on him because I had Tyreek Hill over 64.5 yards receiving, and that was tied to Tua. And if you watch this game, Tyreek Hill was effective. He got some big first downs, creating things that were not there, big catches, it scored a touchdown. But Tua couldn't get him the ball to the level where they could win this game. There was a late drive, which eventually led into an interception, ugly interception, where he missed Tyreek completely wide open. And that was kind of the theme here in this game, that if you watch this game, the score into the fourth quarter was close, but the Bills' offense was dominating, absolutely dominating. Josh Allen looked like a Hall of Famer, ready to go, getting that yellow jacket on. That Bills' offense didn't seem like they missed much. Obviously, there was drives where the Dolphins, when they were not getting shredded on D, they came up with a few big stops. There was a missed field goal by Matt Prater, I think brought the Dolphins back into it. They eventually tied it up 14-14. And there was probably some fear out there in the Survivor world that this might be a major upset. And because I held off, I did not take the Bills. I thought there was an opportunity here to clear out some of you riffraff in the pools I'm in, and take advantage of a divisional Dolphins win. But one of my other prop bets that did work, which was James Cook, had a monster day. So his total yards, rushing and receiving, rushing alone was 100 plus, over 86.5. So that was a success. Josh Allen was 9 or 8 yards short of the over-under of 29.5 rushing. So that did not work out. And what else here? We had a same game parlay, which was fantastic. It was going great. Dolphins plus 20.5. Tyreek Hill 50 yards receiving. And we have Tua 200, and Tua could not make the 200. If he goes in on that drive and ties it up, there's a chance this game goes to overtime. and or the Bills score quickly and he eats up some yards to get to that 200, but it didn't happen. And I guess here's where my biggest part and review of this game is, and that is Tua Tagovailoa. Wow, I think Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk brought it up, and I totally agree that I think we've seen the ceiling, excuse me, of what Tua is, and there is not. I don't think we're going to see an increase in performance, consistently from Tua carrying this Miami Dolphin team any further than they are today, which is 0-3. And I don't think years from now, Tua is going to evolve into more than what he is and what we saw on Thursday night. We had some sparks of him, successfully hitting his receivers, moving the ball, but there's a lot of ugly here. If you recall in this game, many times it looks like his footwork is way off, and he's kind of like scrambling without a plan, and he's missing easy throws. He seems to can't find he can't stay in the pocket. I don't know what's wrong, because the Tua we've seen at Alabama looked a lot more accurate, a lot more comfortable. I obviously know that when you're at Alabama, you have a top-tier offensive line, and maybe that's not the same with the Miami Dolphins. I get it. But the evolution over these years has not been to where I know the Miami Dolphins wanted it to be. And the Dolphins have so many weapons, even Waddle, effective receiver, a lot of big fourth down conversions on Thursday night. Tyreek Hill still has it. And I'll shout it out. Whatever you think of Tyreek Hill off the field and the trouble he's got in, I'm not going to talk to that, right? If he's playing on the field, I'm going to talk to that, which he is, by the way. And if this team does not go through the next stretch of 4 games, which the Chargers are probably the only game that they probably will walk in underdogs. If they're not at least 3-4 by week 7, and we're before the trade deadline in November, Tyreek Hill's got to move. It's simple as that. Tyreek Hill's got to move. We want to see Tyreek Hill on a team that is a contender. That's where his skills are best. I said it before in a few podcasts earlier that he's a part in his career where he needs to do that Odell Beckham thing where he's a hired gun, but he is still in his impact years. He's still the main guy in Miami. He's not just a second-tier receiver at this point in his career. He is an impactful, make a difference type of player, but you have to have a quarterback that can get the ball to him, and the Dolphins don't have that, so they need to think, what is, the future look like in South Beach? Now, if you look back in the Wayback Machine, back at the 2020 draft where Tua was taken. So if you remember, Joe Burrow was taken first overall that year, which obviously the Bengals are happy about. However, his hang-up is injuries, as the turf toe this year, and along with many other injuries that have put Joe Burrow in the lineup. However, if you look at this draft, you had Chase Young selected number 2 by the Washington Redskins at the time, now Commanders. He's no longer there. You had Jeff Okudah, cornerback out of Ohio State, to Detroit. Andrew Thomas, offensive tackle from Georgia, to New York. And then you get to the 5th overall pick. And this is where a decision had to be made by the Miami Dolphins. It was either Tua or it was Herbert. What do you think they would have done if we went back in time today, who they would have taken? Obviously, the Miami Dolphins right now, you can think of their offensive weapons. Replace Tua with Justin Herbert. This is obviously a playoff contending team with aspirations to go further. So they made the wrong call. They made the wrong decision. They had the choice to go with Tua or Herbert. That's the challenge of, trying to scout college quarterbacks. Who is going to be your franchise quarterback? Because when you're picking a quarterback 5th overall, 6th overall, you're saying that we're going to take a chunk of time, 4 to 5 years, to ensure that this is our guy. And I think they've gone to the end of the road here with Tua. But in the NFL, the alternatives are you either wait and try to find a solution in the draft. I doubt you're going to find it in free agency. And if Tua's good enough that there's bottom tier quarterbacks in the NFL, that you're going to be in dark times. So tough decisions for Miami. They have to think about where they want to go, what their expectation is, and where's the bar. Is it set up high or mediocrity? But with the Bills running that division, Patriots possibly with Drake May moving higher in the pecking order in that division. And then I don't know what the Jets are, to be honest with you, so you might have time there. Decisions need to be made in Miami. Also, just to throw out there, yes, Justin Herbert was taken 6th overall in that draft, and guess who was taken 53rd? Your Super Bowl MVP, Jalen Hurts. So the Eagles, you look at some organizations like the Ravens, the Eagles, to name a few, they just do everything correct. They could find a franchise Super Bowl MVP quarterback in the second round. Their teams just know what they're doing. And there's teams that just, they show up. That's the Dolphins. Wow. So that's the story from the Thursday Nighter. That is the outlook for the Miami Dolphins. Now we push into week 3, the Sunday, Monday card here in the NFL. So, talked about the record last podcast, but we were 11 for 16 last week for picks, which was great. Mediocre on the props, 12 for 17. And what was the over-under? I think 8 for 6? No, 12 for... I got that. Oh, sorry. Over-under, we were 11 for 16. 12 for 17 on the props. 8 for 16 on the picks. A better week. Not perfect. And if anybody's telling you they're perfect, they're talking out of their ass and they're lying to you, because we all have pens, we all have pencils, we all have paper, but we decide what we put down on that paper. We decide to put down on that Excel sheet. We don't, everybody can choose to take a mulligan, right? You've been on the golf course where somebody shanks one into the woods, and that's called a mulligan if you decide to forget about that shot and start over. Many of the folks you hear from out there are taking mulligans. That's not what this podcast is all about. We're here to be real. So, interesting week to the NFL, because now we start getting into the world of injuries, significant injuries that change the dynamics of a lot that's going on. So the first game that's up is going to be impacted by an injury, even though the line didn't move or was already accounting for, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders taking on and visiting the Washington Commanders, with Marcus Mariota quarterbacking the Commanders, not Jaden Daniels. Significant miss with the Commanders heading into this game. You got to hope that, Jaden Daniels' legs are a big part of what he does. He's a dual threat. He does everything. And knee problem, not good. Okay? That is not good for their hopes in the NFC when it comes to playoff time. So Marcus Mariota has proven for the Commanders to be a credible backup quarterback. But don't kid yourself. He's a backup quarterback at best. He was probably a backup quarterback when he was starring with the Tennessee Titans. And I use the word starring loosely. So the Vegas Raiders coming off a loss against the Chargers. I think the Raiders need to level set here as far as what they are. I talked about on the previous podcast that I feel that, yes, Geno Smith is an upgrade at the quarterback position for the Raiders. However, I got to believe that Pete Carroll's got to, tell guys, Geno, calm down. It's not going to be jacking the ball up 70% of the time. We got to rely on Gentry, check down a little bit. He's a quarterback that's a threat to absolutely, he just an absolutely threat to throw an interception. He threw 2 against the Chargers because he won't let things go. That's his hang up. That's his default. Not good. But the Commanders with Marcus Mariota, I think at home, they still cover this spread. So I'm going to say that the Commanders cover that 3 points. By the way, these lines are from FanDuel. Encourage you to use multiple books. I'm going to go through FanDuel here for the purposes of a, easy flowing podcast. However, use multiple books and find different lines at different places. I'm not sponsored by BetStamp, but that's a good app to use to kind of compare your local sports books. And maybe you'll find, if you like Washington at 2.5, maybe you'll find the Raiders at plus 3.5. So make sure you're looking for those. Over under 43.5. I'm going to say this game's going to go under 43.5. I could be wrong. However, I see a lot of ugliness here. I think Mariota's going to probably have more long drives that result in field goal attempts more than anything else. And the Raiders are going to push the ball, but eventually turnovers. As far as a player prop in this one, I like Deebo Samuel, Washington Commanders receiver, over 43.5 receiving yards, minus 114. He's eclipsed that mark, twice already this season. And I got to believe that he's going to be a big part of Marcus Mariota's plan, whether it be, planned quick passes. He's probably going to run into the backfield as well. But a lot of check downs. I think we're going to see a lot of Deebo tomorrow in Washington. Moving on to a game I don't know how many people are going to watch outside of the red zone coverage. And that is the Atlanta Falcons visiting the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers are exactly who we thought they were, and they're not that good. Even though they did put on quite a show at the end of that game against Arizona last week, having that final drive with an opportunity to go ahead in that game, probably panicking a lot of survivor pool picks. I know I had a bet on Arizona with, a parlay that I could not afford Arizona to lose. Thank gosh they didn't. But we go into this week with the Atlanta Falcons coming off that big Sunday night bore fest against the Minnesota Vikings. It was Bijan Robinson all day, all night, and it made sense because Minnesota wasn't putting much of a fight back. In this matchup, the line has jumped in favor of the Falcons from 4.5 up to 5.5. It's holding steady now. Over under 43.5. I'm going to say that this game's going to go over. I'm going to contradict myself here because I think the focus is still going to be on Bijan. I think the Falcons cover. I just do think that there's going to be some points scored in this game. That doesn't mean that Bijan doesn't get a taste. He doesn't get the majority of the ball. I'm going to go with the rushing yards for Bijan over 81.5. Now, I kind of stayed away from receiving and rushing, but Bijan's going to get the rock until he doesn't. But I think Penix is going to get a little more time than he did against that tough Minnesota defense. He'll probably put up some yards. So that's where we get the over. That's where we get the cover of 5.5. But Bijan still gets his taste. Over 81.5 for the player prop there. Maybe the survivor pool lock of the week, potentially. Hopefully you feel as confident maybe as I do. I don't know. I'm 80% confident. I'm not there yet to lock it in. But the Green Bay Packers take on and travel to Cleveland to take on Joe Flacco and the Browns. Green Bay was an 8.5-point favorite, now down to 7.5, minus 110 on FanDuel. Over-under was 42.5, went down to 41.5. What does that mean? Well, that means that the Green Bay Packers are a better team than the Cleveland Browns. The Green Bay Packers have shown in 2 home games, they haven't been on the road yet, that they are potentially the real deal and maybe the top dog in the NFC, despite, the Eagles being the reigning defending Super Bowl champions of the world. We'll see what happens as the season progresses. It's a big spread, 7.5 on the road to cover against Cleveland, but Cleveland is Cleveland. And I think now we're at that stage where Cleveland is going to look at, all right, Joey Flacco, we got you here. You got your first 2 games in. We're going to put you back under the helm against the Packers. But you watch. It's going to fade. All right? I'm going to go back to those 2 young quarterbacks. Maybe Shedeur, maybe. Dylan Gabriel, maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I got to believe that the Browns are going to start thinking, all right, let's check what we have and make sure that we know for sure heading into next year's draft if we got a quarterback or not. We don't think we do, but one of these quarterbacks may step up and provide benefit to us. And Joe Flacco's time is a ticking. All right? He's not a spring chicken, by the way. So I think the Packers cover. I'm going to take a limp here that they're going to dominate defensively and offensively, and that this game is going to go over 41.5. You know what? Joey Flacco flicks the ball, man. He's going downfield. He's got a cannon of an arm even at his age. And I got to believe he's going to also player prop over 22.5. They're going to be trailing. I know this Packer defense is lights out. I don't think... Here's what I got. They really, really closed in on Jared Goff in week 1. And then Jaden Daniels, you could tell he wasn't as comfortable in the pocket, really hesitating. Oh, do I throw? Do I not throw? Like really, really outdueled him, out chess mastered him. I think Joey Flacco's got enough savvy playing at home. And to check down or quickly make the reads at the line, jack some balls down the field for some big gains to at least get across the 222.5. But, there's a risk that he gets teed off on and leaves the game injured. I hate to say that, but that's the reality of having an old man quarterback back there. He's brittle. I don't know if he drinks enough milk. I don't know if he has, does enough exercise to keep those bones strong. But watch out for Joey Flacco. Over 222.5 yards, but always an injury risk for a quarterback that age. We move on to an interesting matchup. The Pittsburgh Steelers visiting Foxborough to take on Drake May and the New England Patriots. Both teams 1-1. The Patriots coming off a win in Miami. Kind of a shootout there, an ugly kind of game, but they got the job done. And then Pittsburgh, I'm going to kind of say pissing away an opportunity against Seattle at home. Ugly special teams. This defense for Pittsburgh is absolutely torn apart. A lot of injuries. Not the Steeler defense we're used to. Does that recover here in New England? It may. I don't think it will. But I got to believe that the Steelers are going to get the job done here. They're 1.5 favorites. I think they squeak by. Man, Boswell, kicker for the Steelers. This guy is money, and this is the kind of game where a kicker like Boswell is going to be very valuable. And New England, they had some breaks in the game against Miami. Still inconsistent. Do I think there's going to be some scoring in this game? I'm going to say over 44.5 just because the state of the Steeler offense. But I think it's going to come down to a field goal. Boswell, I'm not going to say he's going to have 8 of them. I think he's just going to have a clutch field goal maybe at the end of the first half, maybe at the end of the game. And that's where it's going to cover the 1.5. Drake May over 221.5. There's nothing telling us right now that, the Steelers are going to stop a quarterback like Drake May. Not saying that Jalen Ramsey may not pick off 1 or 2 passes, but he's going to get his taste. He's going to get his yards. So take the Steelers, take the over, and take Drake May over 221.5. Now we may have the game of the 1 o'clock hour. Got to have my coffee on a Saturday morning. Oh man, just EPL action ready to kick off. This is betting madness. I love it. This is the glory of the Overrated Experience Sports podcast and betting. I was going to say syndicate. It's just me. Raiders. Holy crap. Rams 2-0 take on the 2-0 Philadelphia Eagles. Matchup, second round of the playoffs last year where the Rams almost had the Eagles. Toughest test for the Eagles in that Super Bowl playoff run. Obviously, they walked and shredded the Commanders. Didn't really have much of a challenge with the Chiefs, but they did have fears of that Rams offense who moved the ball very well against this D. I don't think it changes. I think the Rams move the ball against Philadelphia. 3.5. Philadelphia, our favorite, minus 104. I'm going to take the Rams to cover this. I do believe the Eagles squeak this out. It's going to be a close game again. I do believe Matthew Stafford's going to get his yards. Puka, Nacua, and Devontae Adams are terrorizing defenses. Devontae Adams has the traditional deep ball, red zone, where Puka seems to, just gain many, many yards after the catch. So 228.5. I like the over there. I like the game to stay under 44.5. Saquon's going to get his yards. Eagles are maniacal on offense. They're not necessarily explosive. They can be if they want to. They got the horses. They got the weapons. When will they let them loose? I don't know if it's going to be this game, but I'm going to say it's going to stay under 44.5. Now we have an interesting matchup, a divisional matchup, and that is the Indianapolis Colts 2-0 under Danny Dimes against the upstart Tennessee Titans and Cam Ward, first overall pick in this year's draft. The Indianapolis Colts started out as a 3.5-point favorite, has moved up to a 4.5-point favorite. And what do we have? What do we think here? I do think that the Colts get it done. I don't think that Danny Dimes is necessarily going to put up the numbers all season long, but he's probably going to have a solid day here. Tennessee Titans are not ready. And you know what? Jonathan Taylor, running back for the Colts, he's a gamer. He's absolutely lights out. I think it's lost because he plays in Indy. If he was playing with the Giants, Cowboys, 49ers, something like that, he would have more, I think, public value. But for him to have a 90.5 line here for rushing yards, I'll take it all day. And I think that the Colts, like I said, cover the 4.5. And game probably 43.5. I'm going to say over. Just because, Danny Dimes is, it looks like they're not slowing down, right? So I'm going to take a chance that Cam Ward steps up, maybe with a touchdown or two. But the Colts probably score 30, 35 points on the Tennessee Titans. We now have an interesting matchup. I said the word interesting a lot because every week there's multiple matchups that are very, very interesting. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow. No, not with Joe Burrow. Jake Browning is going to be quarterbacking for the Cincinnati Bengals. Yep, that Jake Browning threw 3 picks in a relief effort in a win for the Bengals last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, taking on J.J. McCarthy. No. You might have heard of this name, Carson Wentz. And for you young kids out there, when Carson Wentz came into the league with the Eagles, I think it was the second season, the third season, the season that they won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles, he was an MVP candidate. He was probably leading the charge in that season to be the league MVP at that point of the season before he got injured. And now he left Philadelphia, had enough. Not he had enough. I think his play dictated there was enough there. And now he's bounced around LA, last year in Kansas City. I can't remember Washington at one point. And now with the Minnesota Vikings. So we have a backup Super Bowl here, or a backup Battle Bowl. The Vikings are 3-point favorites, probably just because this game's in Minnesota. This game has moved up from 41.5 to 42.5. It's going to be an interesting. I'm saying that a lot. I'm sorry, guys. I'll edit that out. No, I won't. That'll take too long. Minnesota probably covers here. You know what? No. I'm going to say that the Bengals cover +3. This will probably be a close matchup. It's going to be a sloppy affair. I'm going to say it's over 42.5. You got to be cautious. Does Carson Wentz get the ball to Justin Jefferson? I don't know. All right. He's their game breaker. Is it going to be an Adam Thielen day? The check down, 8 receptions for like 8 yards? Maybe. I have a little more faith that Browning on the Cincinnati side, since he's had many more reps over the last 3 seasons with this group of receivers for the Bengals. So that's why I like that's why I like Jamar Chase to still get over 69.5 yards. That's low. That's obviously the Jake Browning effect without Joe Burrow. But don't count out Jamar Chase, right? You still have to put him in your game plan. So I like the Bengals to cover, the game to go over 42.5, and Jamar Chase is over 69.5. Then we have the Houston Texans on the road, divisional matchup in Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. What are the Jacksonville Jaguars? Well, we know they can put the ball in the end zone, they can score points, but they're sloppy at it. We've seen a little breakdown. Brian Thomas Jr., not an effective day. Found out that he's got a bit of a wrist injury, I believe, or hand injury that may have accounted for some of those drops that he had. But it looked like there was a lack of effort. Liam Cohen, head coach, yelling at Trevor Lawrence to hit his receivers in the chest. And they really pissed this game away in week 2 against the Bengals. Like I said, Jake Browning throws 3 picks. Joe Burrow's out, and they can't knock off the Bengals on the road. They should have had that. Not sure how that spiraled out of control. They're a 1.5 favorite over the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans right now don't look like there's nothing going on. They are very bland. DJ Stroud does not look like he is comfortable at quarterback. And this is a carryover from last year. He does not look comfortable. Lucky he's in this division because the Houston Texans might be an afterthought if they were in, a few other divisions in the AFC. So what happens here? I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars do get it done. I do. I really do. Even though they're a mess, I think they get it done at home. And this game is under 43.5. I can't believe I'm doing that, but I'm going to say under 43.5. No props from this one. Not going to look too much into player props in a game that anything can happen, but we're going to take Jacksonville anyway. Jets. Going to Tampa Bay without Justin Fields. He's got a concussion. Tyrod Taylor, the journeyman backup quarterback. You can't. I don't have enough time in the podcast to list how many backup, backup teams he's played with. Many. That being said, if you're gonna have a backup, he's the guy to have. He's a solid quarterback, but not solid enough to get it done in Tampa. Tampa's a 6.5-point favorite. I think they light up the Jets tomorrow. I do think the Jets move the ball a bit, and this game goes over 43.5, but I don't think a risk here of Tampa losing and not covering. 6.5. All right, now we get into maybe another survivor pool pick, maybe a guarantee, maybe a lock, but if your lock is Seattle, good luck. I do think they're going to win this game. They're 7.5-point favorites. I'm not sure about the 7.5 points. Would I take this game betting wise? No, but for the sake of the podcast, I'm going to say that the Saints do enough to cover this spread. And they're only week 3, so they still have hope, even though hope will diminish because the Saints suck. Spencer Rattler will show his true colors and start forcing and start declining over the year. 41.5. I'm going to say over. I do think there'll be points scored. I don't see Seattle necessarily shutting Spencer Rattler down. This game will be close enough to cover the spread. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, receiver for the Seattle Seahawks. He's the focal point. That over 74.5, I think is very attainable. He is the main guy. He is the main. He's the main receiver. He's the number one for Seattle and Sam Darnoldson. So I think he's probably got another 100-yard receiving game in his future. And that future is on Sunday. Chargers take on the Denver Broncos, host the Denver Broncos. This is the first true home game the Chargers had. Yes, the game in Brazil was a Chargers home game, but this is the first time that the Chargers are going to be playing at SoFi Stadium. The Denver Broncos, who choked away a win in Indianapolis a week earlier, bad penalty, but also before that, a missed field goal that should have been made by Lutz. What a name, Lutz. Anyway, Denver Broncos on the road, Chargers 3-point favorites. Nothing to tell me that the Chargers shouldn't win this game. Denver's a good team, but I think maybe all this talk about the Broncos being potentially the team that wins the division this year and as the KC Chiefs take a step back, I don't know. I think it might be the Chargers. Justin Herbert might be taking another step. I think Harbaugh might have the program he wants. And Keenan Allen's had a big resurgence over the last 2 games. That's why I like his over 51.5 receiving yards. He's had that and more last 2 games. So take that as a prop. I like this game to go over 45.5 and the Chargers to cover. So there you go on that one. Then we go to Arizona on the road against the San Francisco 49ers. Remember to keep an eye on the injury report here. There is a slight, probably doubtful hope that Brock Purdy may play this game. I doubt it. Not going to happen. So the 49ers are still a 2.5-point favorite. So like the Arizona Cardinals are 2-0. They've been pretty solid. I mean, what are they, right? They got a pretty decent D. They are, I don't know what they are. They're solid. That's all I can say. And you got Mac Jones, look pretty good. As long as he has Christian McCaffrey and a few weapons to utilize, I think they get the job done here. So let's take the 49ers to cover 2.5. I think under 44.5. That this went up from 43.5 to 44.5. I don't think there'll be a lot of points here. So let's take the under and move on. The Dallas Cowboys. Is it the best game of the 4:00 window? No, but will this probably be the most viewed game in the 4:00 window? Yeah, right? You have a Dallas Cowboys 1-1 coming off a wild affair against the New York Giants in overtime, taking on the 0-2 Chicago Bears. Ben Johnson, head coach. Caleb Williams, second-year, first overall quarterback. What are the Bears? They got shellacked by the Lions last week. The Dallas Cowboys have looked solid, but what are they? Should they come into Chicago and win? Yeah. Why are they underdogs? I don't know. Give me the Cowboys plus 1.5 for sure. Over under 50.5 in this matchup. What do? It's the overrated experience, guys. I'm going to go over. Screw it. That's a square on me right there. And then CeeDee Lamb, 81 and a half yards receiving. He's done 100 plus last 2 games, man. Just do it. Just do it. Let's go over. CeeDee Lamb's 81 and a half. Sunday nighter, Kansas City 0-2. Weird to hear. We have New York Giants 0-2. Not weird to hear. And the Chiefs are 5.5 point favorites. Russell Wilson, despite a solid game, had teetered on, we may have something here. Russ is throwing down. He looks like Seattle Russ. And then he throws a shit interception late in overtime. There's Russ Wilson, currently. So the calls are, when's Jackson Dart going to probably be out there? When are we going to write this season off? We're not going anywhere. I think Kansas City is going to put the stake in the thought that Russell Wilson was going to be the starting quarterback. I think they cover 5.5. It's up to 50.5 over under. I'm going to say under. It just jumped. I could be wrong. I think I wrote this down right. It jumped from 44.5 to 50. I don't know. But then we have the game of the night. No, by the way, I didn't take any props here. But the game of one of the games of the year, maybe, the Lions in Baltimore Monday nighter. Whoa, Baltimore 5.5 point favorite. Got to believe that performance on the road against the Packers is influencing another real game against one of the best teams in the NFL. Something about the Lions. This is, again, the square better in me that looks at the Lions, that I want them to be successful in this game. I don't want them to be looked at as a fluke. I'm going to take the Lions to cover 5.5. I think they're dangerous here. Ravens are great. Ravens are one of the best teams in the NFL, but they're not invincible. So give me the Lions to cover that 5.5. 52.5 yards, 52.5 for the over. Let's go over, baby. Let's go over. We like overs. A lot of weapons here. Baltimore doesn't seem to slow down. If they do wind up shellacking the Lions, they don't slow down. And the Lions don't slow down, so this is a good recipe for an over. Well, that brings us to the end of the Week 3 card. The pleasure's all been yours. I wish you the best in your survivor pool picks, your fantasy teams, and also taking your sports book to the cleaners. All right? The Overrated Experience is over and out. Bye-bye.